Hey everybody, welcome back to Franchise Player, and today we're going to be checking out one of my favorite handhelds of all time, and that is the Game Boy Advance SP. So over the weekend, I picked up this onyx colored Game Boy Advance SP. It's in pretty good condition, not perfect, but it's getting harder and harder to find these systems in great condition considering they're over 2 decades old. But I really wanted to talk today about why I think the Game Boy Advance SP is still amazing over 2 decades later and that it really holds up and stands the test of time. The GBA SP came out back in March of '03, so it was a couple years after its older brother, the original Game Boy Advance, and there was quite a bit of improvements on this system. And the first improvement that a lot of people were really excited about with the SP was the rechargeable battery. And it was, amazing. It felt like a luxury for a lot of people to not have to carry around a pocket of AA batteries. So a rechargeable battery was a huge benefit and definitely helps the system not feel super dated even today, and they're really easy to replace if you need a new one. The next improvement on the SP and what I feel like makes it really stand out even today was the clamshell design. The clamshell design, I know some people like it, some don't, some prefer the feel of the original Game Boy Advance, but I really like the clamshell. It's super easy to bring with you. This is a handheld that truly fits in your pocket and that you can really bring anywhere. So personally, I'm a big fan, and Nintendo even rolled with that clamshell design all the way up until the 3DS. The GBA SP came in two different models. The model I have here is actually the less desirable of the two, and that is the AGS-001. That only has a front-lit screen. I still don't think it looks too bad, but the kind of premier, more sought after version is the AGS 101, and that actually has a backlit screen that looks really good even today. But we'll dive a little more into more modern revisions and some mods later on in the video that make the system feel a little less out of place in the current year. One major reason why I think the GBA SP is still an amazing system, even in 2024, is the simplicity of the games. I mean, there's really a game out there, regardless of whatever genre you like, for pretty much anyone, from, Pokemon games, RPGs like the Golden Sun games, kart racers like Mario Kart Super Circuit, great side scrollers and platformers like Donkey Kong Country. You have some arcade classics, like right here I have Pac-Man, and this was not too long after the heydays of the arcade, so I think it was really cool to have arcade games in your pocket. You have beat 'em ups, like I said, you have pretty much of everything. There was even a GTA game on the Game Boy Advance. Mind you, it was a top-down GTA game, but still pretty cool to have. And a big reason, at least for me, why I love playing games on the GBA is they're really simple. You can pop it in, play for 10 or 20 minutes, a quick play session, right? Where it doesn't feel like a huge task. I think something that at least I'm dealing with, and I think maybe a lot of other people are dealing with too, is modern gaming fatigue, where every time you turn around, there's some update that needs to be done. Maybe servers are down if you're wanting to play a game, and it always seems like there's something that takes away from more of your time for gaming. And the older you get, the more precious that time is. So it's really cool to jump back on an old school game or a retro game here and there, like on the Game Boy Advance SP, and sit down, pop a game in, and just chill out for 20 minutes without having to worry about being bombarded with, microtransactions, updates, ads. I know it sounds like I'm totally hating on modern games, and, I still love modern games. Right now I'm playing through the Dead Space remake on PS5 and having a really good time with that. It's just a nice breath of fresh air to go back to some of these older games that are just a lot more simple. Now, another reason why I think the Game Boy Advance SP is still such a special console and is still really fun and, feels almost timeless is the portability of it. The SP truly is a handheld. This is such a small, compact design. The clamshell really helps out with being able to fit in pretty much any pocket, jeans pocket, a jacket pocket, throw it in your backpack. It's super easy to take with you. Now, modern handhelds like the Switch and even the Steam Deck are, of course, these huge powerhouses where you can play tons of different games from all different eras, but it's a little bit harder to take those with you. You're not exactly throwing a Switch, OLED or Lite in your pocket, or a Steam Deck. It's something where you kind of got to put it in a case, toss it in a bag, and, keep it moving. So the SP's portability, I think, is a huge selling point and, something that helps me keep coming back to it even in 2024. Another amazing feature of the Game Boy Advance SP is the backwards compatibility. So if the GBA library wasn't big enough for you, You can go back and play original Game Boy games and even Game Boy Color games. It's definitely not ideal with the backwards compatibility that the original Game Boy games and Game Boy Color games definitely stick out of the system, but hey, at the end of the day, man, you have backwards compatibility, so you can't really complain too much. Now, if you're interested in taking a look at some GBA SPs, but you're like, you know what, man, the original models are a little too dated for me, then have no fear. There's a huge modding community of people that actually mod these Game Boy Advance SPs. They'll put on new ISP displays, which look amazing. I've seen some of them with upgraded batteries, and I've seen some of these modded systems actually have USB-C charging, which is crazy to see on a console this old. I think the modded Game Boy Advance SPs are pretty cool, but they're just not really my cup of tea. Personally, I prefer playing on vanilla hardware, like the AGS-001 or the AGS-101 are definitely good enough for me. But if you're playing on original hardware and kind of want to spice things up a bit and you don't really care about collecting physical games, you can get what's called an EverDrive, or basically an EverDrive clone, and this looks like a normal Game Boy Advance game cartridge, but you can load it up with ROMs of basically any Game Boy game available. So if you're like, hey, I want to play on original hardware, but I'm not trying to drop a ton of money on my childhood game collection or exploring the library, I never really had a chance to play, then one of these might be a good move for you, because like I said, you can load it up with tons of games and not have to lug around, games if you're traveling. Now, I'm probably really blinded by nostalgia considering I grew up with the Game Boy Advance, but I think the Game Boy Advance SP is a system that holds up extremely well considering it's well over 20 years old. I think the art style, the graphics, the soundtracks from the games that are on the GBA are amazing. I think a lot of them have really stood the test of time and hold up really well. I think this was an era where, developers were really working with what they had and making the absolute most out of the power from a little handheld. And what really goes to show that these games look great, obviously other than going back and playing them, would be checking out some indie games. If you look at modern indie games or indie releases over the past, 5 years or so, a lot of these games emulate the art style found on the Game Boy Advance, which is really cool and just kind of shows that, the GBA was a spectacular system that influenced a lot of people and still has a pretty big influence on gaming even today. But yeah, that'll pretty much do it for today's video. I think the Game Boy Advance SP specifically is still an amazing system that is very portable, about as portable as it gets, has an amazing game library from, obviously the GBA. You can play original Game Boy games, Game Boy Color games. If you want to go the ROM route, you can, kind of like I showed with the EverDrive. If you want more of a modern take on the system, you have a ton of options with mods of IPS screens, upgraded batteries, upgraded charging ports. I mean, the options are really endless. But yeah, that'll do it for today's video. Let me know some of your favorite Game Boy Advance games of all time, or maybe some of your favorite Game Boy Advance models. I know there's a ton of them from, the OG, the SP, the Micro, but yeah, as usual, appreciate you guys watching, and we'll catch you soon with another video.